Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session today. We're very excited to be here. I am really thrilled. We're actually being recorded, so I'm sure that we're going to make a ton of mistakes and everything is going to go wrong. So just bear with us as that happens, because I'm positive it's going to happen. I'd like to start off by just giving a couple of introductions. My name is Yoni Barkan. And my colleague here, Daniel Spern. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we jumped into the session today. I have been enamored by conversational AI for quite some time. So it came to me through an Alexa. I mean, most of us, I think a lot of us, everyone here should have an Alexa at home, but this was years ago when Alexa first came out. I just was blown away by the capabilities of this device. And in my previous career, I built an integration between Alexa and Salesforce, and I thought this was the most amazing thing ever. And I took it on a tour of the world. I literally, we had my company and we went on a kind of a tour, and we talked about how we could integrate Alexa with business applications, and it was the start of something really amazing. And then I followed that up by developing a mobile app that was built on Lex that connected with a Salesforce that helped drive a salesperson's kind of interactions with their opportunities. And this was really powerful, and I loved it. And ever since then, I've just been exploring further and further the power of conversational AI and the way that this can be used, by businesses and by companies to drive better customer experiences, to drive better adoption of technology, to drive better worker experiences. So whatever the different direction whatever perspective that you're looking at it from. So today, at Deloitte, I run Deloitte, by the way, which is known, of course, as a tax and audit firm, obviously is a massive consulting entity as well. And within Deloitte, there is an entire effort to build accelerators and assets and solutions and products that we can help drive people's or our businesses' success in their space. And I'm responsible for building our next generation contact center solution, which is based very much on conversational AI as kind of the core principle of how this solution works. You'll hear a little bit more about that later on, but that's just to give you a sense of where we're coming from and why we're talking about conversational AI today. Cool. Daniel?
Let me see if I'm on. Am I on?
You're not on.
I'm not on. Hold on. I am not. I can hear myself now. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Spern. I've been working with Yoni for the past couple of years on building this mission and vision we have for creating a conversational capability to support all different types of organizations. I've been in this space probably for about 7-8 years in the conversational space now. And in the user experience and engineering space, I've been doing it for more than 25 years. I started out in my career being a cognitive scientist and learning and studying about the way people actually interact with language, they interact with interfaces and systems. And then I progressed from there into actually being an engineer for 10 years and becoming an architect as an engineer. And spent the last 15 years being a user experience designer. Combining those two things together, the most challenging thing you could ever do is try to make computers be able to talk to people. It's really easy to create systems that allow people as engineers to talk to them and write code, but it's entirely different when we're actually using natural language to actually have the computers understand us. And so for me, this is the passion I have now, is to actually really figure this out for organizations, big and small, and sort of think about how they actually allow us to get at information that you normally have to spend hours and hours and hours on the phone waiting for someone to actually answer that one message you have. And that we all know how annoying that is. So I'm here to actually solve that problem.
That's both of our goals, to solve that problem. I'm also determined to solve the problem, which I'm guilty of, is just immediately asking for an agent. But that's a whole different issue. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to go through today. So we're going to talk about how we view building conversational AI today. What is it, what are we doing when we're building conversational AI? And what are some of the key challenges that we're facing? And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we think is the solution to that. Like, how do we build a conversational AI and of course, our focus is, we're not talking about building the next consumer-facing Alexa device. Like, that's not the kind of direction that we're going, but really more for that contact center space. How do we perfect, or at least work towards perfection, around the conversational AI space? And so Daniel will then go into some of the solutions that we have in place to help facilitate our way of thinking about conversational AI. And then we'll talk a little bit about the business applications of that and show you a couple of examples of how this all works. With that, I want to get into what is it like to build conversational AI today? It's actually kind of a challenge. Is there anybody in the audience today that's currently working with building conversational AI in a contact center space? I just kind of want to get a sense of it, okay? So great, perfect. Okay, so first of all, the lights are amazing. I probably look fantastic, but I also cannot see any of you, so I'll point generally in your direction. I'm going to ask you guys questions in a few minutes. But it's good to know there's folks in here. Other people in the room, other conversational AI technologies. I mean, are people working on consumer-facing devices? I'm just curious. Anybody here working on consumer-facing? Okay, that's fantastic. By the way, this session's not nearly as cool as like the robotics conversation. I feel like, we don't have a robot coming on stage. I mean, Daniel's close to a robot, but I saw one in the hallway, and I was just like, what am I doing here? There's nothing like that to make you feel like I've chosen the wrong career.
Robots are living on phones.
Right. Or the spacesuits. I mean, like, I walk by that thinking I'm in the wrong career. All right. I lost my train of thought there. So, okay, back to conversational AI in the contact center space. So, some of the challenges we face. There's obviously a huge adoption issue around conversational AI in the contact center space. The biggest challenge, of course, is that conversational AI is not helping customers get to the kind of answers and solutions that they need. And a big driver for that is the limitations that comes with the way that conversational AI today is implemented and designed and implemented. There's a limit based on the way that we actually build conversational AI solutions that limit scale and flexibility of our solutions. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is, but that's one of the key things that we're going to focus on today. Now, there are other challenges to building conversational AI in enterprise space that makes it very difficult. He really doesn't want me walking over to the machine. There's a couple of things. Like the biggest one that I think we face is data, right? The access to the data that the solutions need. We're not going to tackle that one today, but I didn't want it to go unmentioned because I think that's a big issue that organizations face in terms of enabling the right kind of information to our bots. So what are some of the challenges? Let me see. I want to ask those of you anyone who wants to kind of chime in and say some of the challenges that they're facing in developing conversational AI bots today. A customer, oh, great, perfect. What is the challenge with, he said a customer knowledge based. What is the challenge that you're having around a customer knowledge base?
Particularly around understanding like the customer's like business function and understanding the kinds of questions that they get asked and the kinds of answers that they expect to deliver to their customers and to their service staff.
Oh, interesting. So I think actually some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is like directly applicable to what you're discussing. Exactly. What about you, sir? Well, I can solve that for you. Just come to Deloitte. We got that one checked, so we can move on. Yes, you in the back. No, but I'm sorry, before I actually go into you, that's a huge problem, by the way. We struggle with it too. It's a massive problem. The technology is changing so rapidly and so quickly as well that understanding, knowing how to do this is a real issue. Yes, ma'am. Unstructured data, again, you're like, I didn't plant her, but unstructured data is a massive problem that we're going to try to tackle today as well. So that's a great point. When I think about conversational AI today and what we're actually building, most of what we're building today. Oh,
yes, the clicker works.
The clicker works. Is very process driven. When I go in to start designing or building a bot, I have to design the flow that I want a customer to follow, right? Here's the dirty little secret about conversational AI. The vast majority of conversational AI is a whole bunch of complex if-then statements. If you say this, you get this. If you say that, you get that. That's fundamentally what almost every conversational AI solution is doing today. That's a massive problem. First of all, that's not artificial intelligence. Now, the AI side, of course, is coming in on the natural language understanding side, the ability to know what you're saying and what it means. Of course, that's crucial. I don't mean to minimize that. But the true nature of most, at least contact center solutions today is following a path that has been predetermined for the customer. You call in, they ask you a yes-no question. Based on that yes-no question, they ask you another yes-no question. Maybe then you get a chance to say an open-ended question, but they're expecting, that's some sort of data input, which they know how they're going to respond to it. Those are what we call deterministic solutions, right? They are predetermined. You have no free will when you are dealing with these kinds of solutions. These don't scale, though. It takes a huge effort to design and then to develop these solutions because you actually need to spend a huge amount of time on the upfront thinking about how are you asking the questions, the terminology you're asking the questions, are you going to get the answers you want, and then guiding them through that process and then building that all out. And so deterministic solutions really create a limitation to how we can, to the limitation to the kind of scale and complexity that we can have with our conversational solutions. And they also limit the ability of customers to interact with these solutions. So how do we solve that, right? Well, so we start to move from deterministic into probabilistic, and I'm going to hand it off to Daniel now to talk a little bit about that.
Probabilistic, as we all know, are really where the AI comes in. It's not determined. It's but we want to create systems that are reacting to what the user's saying. We also don't want to create these sentient beings, as we want to be able to control them. Probabilistic is really a way of taking in all the information in about the organization and structuring that against a bunch of different models that you can apply during the course of your entire conversational experience itself. Let's see here. So really, we're about building systems that support us as humans, not about having us have the systems themselves become beings themselves. And so that's a real key aspect of what we want to do. And one of the biggest challenges everyone has ever faced when you're dealing with a deterministic flow is, hey, I'm human, and I have a different idea about what I want to do next. And so you're context switching, you're topic switching. And how do you deal with that in a deterministic system? You can't. You really can't. You can try to put them into another flow, and then you have to figure out how to get them to that other flow. That's also very problematic as well. And so what we do a lot of is figure out how to create models that are able to recognize when someone's actually saying, hey, I want to go to another flow, switch them to that other experience, allow them to have the determined flow around that, but also be very capable of understanding the context which is happening and all the prior context that's been accumulated through the previous other parts of the system. So let's see, I'm going to switch here to the next slide. Where we were trying to get to with our probabilistic system is actually determining all the facts of the system. And really what we want to try to, our main goal is to create a combination of deterministic and probabilistic together. One which is the AI knowing all the facts, and the process which is the bounds and rules of an organization being applied as of keeping the guardrails on top of the experience you're having with the user, so that your organizational processes are in place and that things can be in compliance to the way that the organizations run. That's really the main solution that we're trying to create. So the challenge with all that is to create a conversational NLU layer that is aware of all the facts as well as all the rules, and bring them all together in a complex ensemble model, is the way I like to describe it. Let's go to the next.
Well, I think before we go on,
Yeah.
I wanted just to comment. I love the visual here for just a second, because in some ways, what we're saying the solution is not just relying on a completely probabilistic approach, meaning just create a knowledge graph, and we'll go into more of like sort of how this is, not just create a knowledge graph leveraging unstructured data or structured content and putting it out there and allowing you to ask questions against it. Because from a business context perspective, from the ability of a contact center or from a conversational AI solution that the customer is looking to call into and accomplish something, that is a great way to get information out, but not necessarily a great way to create a task or accomplish something. I love to think about a solution that we're developing around creating, just taking a payment, right? You can imagine that if you're trying to build a self-service solution that enables a customer to make a payment, that has to be very structured. It has to have a very guided approach. First off, give me your credit card number. Give me the name of the credit card holder. Give me the expiration date. Give me this, whatever. Provide the billing amount or whatever details you need. That has to be really well structured.
But I want to know how much do I owe.
But I want to know how much I owe, right? Or I want to know what credit cards you take. Or I want to, know if I can pay half now and half later. That is when the knowledge graphs and that probabilistic solution can then be added into our predetermined flow to enable it to provide a much grander, broader experience rather than just the narrow deterministic flow that we developed before. Does that make sense from a high-level conceptual perspective? Okay, so we want to show you an example of this. So we're going to switch.
Demo time.
Demo magic time. I originally...
Switching here?
I'll press it.
Okay.
So originally, we wanted to try to do this live, but just decided that the risks were too great.
He talked me out of it. I really wanted to do it live.
We've been fighting about this. Do it live. Okay, so I recorded these this morning. And this is a simple bot that we built really based on some previous work that we've done, but we kind of looked at a very simple bot that we could show you today that brings together both a deterministic and a probabilistic approach, meaning part of it is really flow-driven, and the second part of it is really more knowledge graph-driven. So let's take a look at our first example, and cross your fingers.
Hi, thanks for calling the 401k helpline, powered by TrueServe, Deloitte's digital contact center solution. I'm a virtual assistant that can answer questions about 401k plans. As a new caller, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
I'm going to stop for just a second. Immediately, we've actually gone down a very deterministic flow. We are identifying that you are a new caller as opposed to a returning caller, and we're taking you down a specific path. So already this is what you do all the time when we're building conversational AI, right? So this is our first decision point that we've done.
Are you a resident of Las Vegas?
I lied.
Yes, I am.
Totally lied.
All right, home sweet home.
We added that in for demo.
What's your zip code?
89119.
I made that up.
Okay, got it. Ask me anything about 401k plans.
What is a 401k plan?
I heard you say, what is a 401k plan? I found an answer for you with a confidence level of 97%.
Okay, I'm stopping for a second. I'm going to play the response in a moment. Two things that we would never do in an actual conversational bot. One, we repeated back the question. We did that really just so that we could validate for the purposes of this demo and like that you're hearing what we said and all those kinds of fun things. In a real live scenario, we would take that out. We also aren't going to tell you the confidence percentage of your response. Like, we have very low confidence.
We thought
in
you
this
guys might
response,
like that though.
Like, it's not that great. No, we're doing it to show you, right? To demonstrate that we actually have an entire confidence, the ability to predict the probability of how correct this is. And we actually limited possible responses to the only over 93% probability.
I think it's more like 70, but yeah.
It was what?
More like 70.
Oh, 70, well, okay, anyways. So that's a factor for how you actually control what kinds of responses you get. There's a lot of different ways that we do that, but that was just one thing. Now, this is going to go on for a bit, but if you don't know anything about 401ks, now's your time to learn.
401k plans let employees save for retirement on a tax-deferred basis by having contributions to their employer-sponsored 401k plan deducted directly from their pay before taxes. Although you don't typically pay taxes up front on the contributions you make to your 401k plan, the taxes are generally due when you withdraw your savings. As a 401k plan participant, your contributions are deducted from every paycheck before taxes. This means you typically only pay federal income taxes on the amount of your income remaining after your 401k contributions have been deducted by your employer.
So I'm just going to stop for a second. One of the really powerful things about that is actually taken from the document that we're looking at right here. And we're going to show that to you in a little bit. We're going to come back and show you that exact text or parts of that text. And you're going to see how that we're actually pulling that from unstructured information. Or in this case, well, yeah, unstructured sort of Now, I want to ask it one more question, then I'm going to show you one more quick thing, just so that you see how we're playing with the different ways that we use deterministic and probability all in one. So the last question also pulls out information from this document, but it's a very quick answer.
Do you have any additional questions?
Yes.
It's a little awkward pause here.
Ask me anything about 401k plans.
How much can I contribute to my 401k plan?
I heard you say, how much can I contribute to my 401k plan? I found an answer for you with a confidence level of 93%. $16,500 per year.
That's
Do you
pretty
have
good.
any additional questions?
It's very important not to be rude to your AI.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I share the concerns about sentient beings. I'm always nice to Alexa. I'm always nice to my AI. Now, so what you see there is that information, both those last two questions, is being pulled from the actual knowledge graphs that are created as we pull out the content from either this document as well as a few other documents that we did for the purposes of this, right? You pull out structured and unstructured data and then create knowledge graphs and then wrap those within, transformers and ensemble models that Daniel will go into in a bit. Let's hold off on the second call until later on. If we have time, we'll come back and do that second call. It shows just a slightly different perspective on that. Any questions about this demo before we move on? Or about about what that is and what we're doing? Perfect. Okay. So with that, let's
talk about our process. So we've just shown you guys like the end result of all the work that we do to get to here. And now I'm going to really talk to you about what is TrueServe and how we sort of break it down into our process and methodology around that. First and foremost, we start out with a discovery process. And this discovery process that we have is done in two folds. The most important fold is sort of a top-down, understanding what the organization's rules and structures are all about, and designing the flows to fit those rules and structures of the organization. That's a really important part of it. The second one is from a bottom-up perspective, taking a look at all the capabilities of that organization through their artifacts and archives of documents, allowing us to actually pull in how-to documents, transcripts that might come off the agent call centers, manuals to actually train the agents themselves. You can use those as information that can be pulled into our conversational assistant through our discovery process. We take all that, we use some really advanced NLP techniques to bring in that information, and then it goes into a level of a knowledge graph that's not something you would actually place out onto your artificial intelligence solution. What you'd actually do is actually use that as ways to find the details that you need to have so you can actually mine it for actual real content to be used to train the final solution you have. And then to recognize the topics around what people are calling in about. So depending on the document type you select and how you actually use it, these NLP techniques can be very, very powerful and very, very useful, bringing this information from the bottom up and understanding really the full set of functionality that your organization has in its experience. The thing for me to think about this is that we as humans innately understand how to use language. We write lots and lots of things down. Not everybody is an engineer. And so what's really exciting about the future, where this is going with these advanced NLP pipelines, is the ability for our natural systems that have been built up over years and years, and the organizational knowledge that's been curated in those documents to be pulled out and be pulled into the artificial intelligence solutions that we're trying to build for tomorrow. It also means that you can have the editors write the edits of their responses the way they think they should be written, and the bots will actually respond based upon their pulling this information out. So human oversight, human in the loop can all sort of be done by us regular Joes who aren't engineers. I am an engineer, but I like to think of myself as a regular Joe too. So the next step is to take all this knowledge we've gathered from the organization and actually start to curate it, and then go from understanding and gathering it to developing it and deploying it. And what we should all understand too from the very beginning in our process is that you want to start with understanding what the outcomes you're trying to measure are. And so we start with obviously the discovery phase and the design phase, and then we go to developing a complete model around the outcomes we're trying to measure for. And outcomes can be at multiple levels. For the contact center, at the very highest level, the outcomes are very obvious. How many people are being handed off to agents? For most systems, a lot. Because most people don't find the agent assistants to be very helpful because of that deterministic flow. Not until you get these more nuanced NLUs underneath of it will they find them to be more useful. So you get a lot of agent leak handoff to the agents. And then there's the other obvious thing, the abandonment. How many times do people just get frustrated and hang up? So you want to measure those two things. And finally, there's that golden call or the containment rate. And those are the three top things you want to measure at your contact center as a whole. But when you start thinking about the nuance of each of the different subflows and how they get layered in, there's also outcomes there too. And so when it's a payment flow, one of the outcomes could be a successful payment made, or the person successfully signed on for auto pay next. And so you can look at the different things that you have and really design those measurements really purely from the very beginning. That, I think, is the most important thing that we can impart to everybody. Be outcome driven to begin with, and make sure that you're measuring everything so that ultimately at the end of the day, you can actually determine was the work that you're doing contributing and attributing to the goals that you have. Because if you can't find where the problems in the system are so that you can test and tune and deliver a better solution tomorrow, you're never going to get to the goal we all have for these systems. Let's move on to another slide here.
One thing I would add just is that, and I think the representation of that picture, which, is really the circular kind of concept, is that you're never really done. And I hope that no one goes away trying to think about building a conversational solution and thinking, I'm going to do it once, and then I'm going to deploy it, and I'm going to be done. Because that is never going to be the case. First of all, information changes. Now, one of the things, information changes, business process change, so of course those kinds of changes. But just the broader understanding of how people interact with this, the ability to learn from how people interact with your bot is absolutely a crucial step in the process. You have to learn and then make adaptations and change, bring that back into the design, bring it back into the build, back into the test and train phase.
Which leads to the next thing, which is once people start using your system, they're actually going to change their behavior. And that's a whole new set of things you have to start looking and discovering again as well, too. So it really, while discovery is sort of sitting on the side over here, you're constantly discovering as well.
You are constantly discovering.
Yeah.
And in fact, though, one of the things that we're doing, like as you saw with the 401k solution, that one, if we added new content to the the data that gets ingested into that knowledge graph, more data would be able to be piped in, and new questions would be able to be answered by the bot. So each of these phases, discover and the more deterministic processes, are always loops that are continuously happening.
Example of that would be like a new fact added to the system, such as like next year you can add $20,000 to your 401k plan versus now $16,500.
Right. Well, 16,000 is actually from 2012. So
Okay.
I think the amount's different, by the way, if anyone is a 401k expert out there. It's 22K now. It's not 16,000. I knew that for a while, and I was like, I'm just going to let this be. The data is wrong. It's bad data in, bad data out,
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. So this diagram, we're not going to talk about all the nuances of this slide, but the interesting part about this, again, is the intersection between the discover process and the design process. And we think of the design that's, again, going back to our kind of big buckets of deterministic approaches and probabilistic approaches. It's about how do we intersect these two things to create something that is very, very powerful for your contact center, for your customers or consumers to leverage, right? So in an example here where we have a bot that has been designed and developed, right? Once the bot can be built in such a way that it actually calls through APIs or through any kind of process an entirely separate knowledge graph to be able to respond back with information, right? So we can intersect and connect to our NLU models that are built off of our probabilistic approach. So now, before we wanted to show you a couple of bits of technology that we use to help facilitate this. And through that, you're going to understand a bit of the process that we follow. I wanted to just take a brief aside for a moment and describe TrueServe for a second, because you see that name up there. So TrueServe is a contact center solution, right? We are building, what we think to be the next generation contact center solution, but we're not trying to rebuild telephony. We're not trying to rebuild conversational AI engines. We're trying to leverage the best in breed solutions out there to create a solution that we can bring to customers that are enabled by these great technologies. What you heard today was actually enabled by a solution called OneReach, which lives on the AWS infrastructure. We use a tool called Cognizer to help ingest huge documents and structured information, create the question and answer pairs, and provide a natural language query interface to that data. It also provides tooling for human in the loop. We use Amazon Connect and Lex for other parts of our conversational AI engines, as well as, of course, all of our telephony and technology, and then Salesforce for an agent experience. But wrapped around all of that, right, and going deep in that is not the purpose of today's session, but wrapping around that is how do we design and measure all of that? And that's the objective that we really want to get to and what we want to show today, because DNA is the tool that allows us to design all of our conversational interfaces, as well as analyze the effectiveness of them, and then, again, continue that long life cycle of training and tuning our solutions. So with that, Daniel, you want to talk a little bit about DNA and then go into the show?
I'm going to switch over and show you some this is live now. Okay. This is our DNA product, our DNA product. We actually, proud to say, we're actually releasing it today for the first time.
Yeah. Well, the term product is always very scary. So as a product manager, I know it's a very scary word. I don't like it.
So what I'm showing you right now is DNA and where we are with how this works. We start out, as I mentioned earlier, outcome-driven design. So starting by defining what the outcomes are going to be for what you're trying to build. And for us in the contact center, the outcomes we like to measure are, human in the loop. How often are we actually pulling somebody in to actually maybe oversee the conversation, may not be actually react to the conversation, or just look at the conversation after something had happened. For example, is one of the things that we find really important, especially in a regulated industry. You might have an answer that the graph system might pull out, but you don't actually want to have that answer told to a user until you've actually validated that with a human. So that's a human in the loop task. It might be a question that's novel, that's been asked, paired with a response that you already have available, but that question-answer pairing might be the first time ever. Let's just make sure that we have human oversight before we actually deploy that, so that we measure that as a human-in-the-loop interactivity. Abandonment, containment, and transfer to agent. And what you see here is what we refer to as our global interaction flows, the point in time when the actual person calls the system that you're having, and it could be global interactions can be a lot of things. It could be an inbound phone call. It could be an outbound phone call. So those are two different interaction patterns and how they actually progress back and forth with the user. There is someone goes to your website. I don't even think we mentioned this, omni-channel, multi-channel, the whole world that we live within. But the idea of what we're trying to build is from a contact center's perspective is like anytime there's a need for an end customer to talk to the organization, we want to be able to be there to handle that interaction and to provide the defined best process the organization wants to have for that interaction, and live at a level above your services so you can interact and get the latest and most relevant data out of that system and give the information the user is actually asked, contextually aware of where the user is in their journey across the system. So we define these global interaction patterns, which we then link in with skills. Skills here are below, and these can be quite a vast array of skills, depending on the organization and the types of interactions your end customers are going to have with that organization. Payments are obviously an important one. The status of my case is important. A lot of people need to reset their passwords all the time. Those are important use cases. So that's what you have. Update my contact information.
One of the key parts that I love about this is when we are payments, for example. I mentioned that earlier. It's one of the solutions that we've developed. But the issue there is we also wanted to drive a certain type of behavior. We wanted people to set up auto payments, right? And we wanted to drive that behavior. And so we created, and we knew ahead of time when we started to build this, that we needed to have an auto pay setup as an actual outcome that we were looking to measure and measure and then strive to achieve. And so we built in to our thinking at the beginning part, what is the outcome we're looking to achieve? And then when we did the designs, we actually worked towards defining that outcome. So that's why these are here. They're not just high-level outcomes or things to put on a slide, but rather ways that drive our thinking and process.
So I'm going to go a level deeper here, and I'm going to drive into those patterns, those interaction patterns themselves. Okay? So here, the pattern of interaction, how a user actually calls in and talks to the system, and the things that we can actually support those users, which is a lot of times they have friction points. We call those friction points possibility of a fallback or an escalation point, and so we bake all those in globally to our system to escalate the user. And then, these are the flows that are process-driven around the organization and the way that organizations want to authorize the user calling in. A lot of times these organizations, this data could be for a banking call, then you might want to have 3 or 4 different factors of authentication at that point. But if it's just, for a novel, I'm calling in to find out the movie times, authentication is not important other than maybe if you've bought a ticket, how you might want to authenticate for the ticket that you purchased. And so there's different levels of how that might work. And then a layer below this, here in the flows, so let's go deeper here. I'll drive in to one of these flows below and actually look at the actual interactions themselves. Let's go to what we were just looking at. Oh, that was the one, okay. I'll find one that's worth looking at here. Let's see. That was the same one again. But let's just put it this way. Really, the primary interactions, if we're talking about conversational systems, it's really about asking a person a question. The question is either in an open or in closed fashion, or telling a person some information. And really, there's 3 substantial basic elements to what I refer to as our design system. And this design system allows us to keep our conversational design and our analytics at a very high level, at a level of abstraction above our actual implementation. This gives us the ability to actually have really pure measurements. So I'm going to move beyond that and actually get to showing you what this ultimately comes down to is our ability to actually generate a huge set of requirements that actually lead to our ability to actually measure with the analytics. And so we're going to pull up some analytics here and see the performance of the system at a very high level. This is looking at the system at a very global level, and then we can drill in and look at the system at a much smaller level. Let's say for agent transfer.
Designed and developed our solution. We put the solution into a production environment where customers are calling in. That data is then being pumped back into TrueCert or into DNA to then show how it's performing against it. So it's a round trip here within DNA to be able to get that complete flow. You can just go back to the all other one,
yep.
Daniel, and just start there.
I was actually going to switch to another project.
This is what happens when you do live demos after 2 years of not doing live demos.
So
I blame COVID, by the way, for any problem that goes wrong. Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, so that was demo 1. We have another demo we wanted to talk about. Sort of like that was DNA, the product DNA. Now we also mentioned this idea of knowledge graphs and the NLU layer behind all this. So let's dive into that a little bit, and we're going to show you a little bit of how that works. So this is the discovery knowledge graph that I'm about to sort of bring up on the screen for you. We use an NLP pipeline to pump this into Neo4j, another one of our ecosystem partners. And we get this huge graph of information. From this one document that we previously showed you on the screen, we created 529 nodes. It's actually not a lot when you talk about a knowledge graph, but it's pretty large. And it actually creates all the subject, object, verb relationships from that document, from every sentence in that document. And then creates the interconnecting relationships are the verbs and how these verbs then relate to each of the different nouns in the system. And that's what's represented here on this graph. And we can now, let's see if I can go back and...
Can I just take 1 second and say, because when I first started learning about this, knowledge graphs were like, first of all, I think they're amazing now, but they're very confusing to me at the beginning. And knowledge graphs are a way of deconstructing the information into very, very simple constructs, right? You have 2 relationships. You've got Yoni and you've got Remars, and the connection between those 2 things. Yoni presents at Remars. Yoni attends at Remars. Yoni, stumbles and falls at Remars. Okay, that last one's probably a little different. But that's the sense. And then it's also, well, Daniel's also at REMARS. Daniel presents at REMARS, right? And by doing that, we create a whole slew of relationships that can be intertwined. Yoni and Daniel are related. We are coworkers, right? Each of these different nodes within the knowledge graph, right, are ways of looking at lots of complex data, right? And then we can query the knowledge graph, right, and come back up with questions and answers that we're looking for. Who works with Yoni? Well, Daniel works with Yoni. Where did Yoni stumble at? REMARS, right? Now we're getting the answers that we're looking for.
And then there could be 3 or 4 jumps in between to actually
course.
get all those pieces together, to actually find the actual query you're looking for, to actually get the factual information out of the system that you could then bring back to the end user who's looking for that information.
Exactly.
Part of the magic behind all this is deep learning models as well, that actually take the embeddings and actually embed them into the graphs themselves, so you can do embedding-based queries on embedding databases to actually pull these out very quickly. It's a very powerful solution. This is some technology that one of our ecosystem alliance members is Cognizer AI, who's been able to sort of do this for us and work with us and actually bring this together underneath the hood with our partner in OneReach.
That's right.
So what I'm showing you here on the screen right now, we had that 529 element graph, and then now if I sort of just query on one attribute or verb, contribute, you can kind of see now what are the real things or objects that are actually at play when we're actually talking about contribute there. So I can go in here and I can zoom in a little bit. Let's see, I think I can zoom in, maybe not. We'll try to refresh this.
Now, it's kind of impossible to look at the graph and be able to read it in a logical way. We can look at it sort of and see, okay, here are the relationships, but there is some, this is abstracting a lot of complexity in terms of what the actual words are and content that lives behind it.
Yes, and then there's also then the text that this all relates back to. So that's really what I wanted to go to next, which is to show you a demonstration of all this technology and how it comes back together again. Let's go off of that. Using 3 fingers. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to play another demo here, another question we've asked the bot. And then as we play along, we're going to look into the document this all came from.
I may have turned off.
Hi, thanks for calling the 401k helpline, powered by TrueServe, Deloitte's digital contact center solution. Welcome back. Ask me anything about 401k plans.
Just note, it knows that I called
What
back.
is the criteria to make a catch-up contribution?
I heard you say, what is the criteria to make a catch-up contribution? I found an answer for you with a confidence level of 93%. If you are an employee, aged 50 or over.
There you go. That's exactly how.
Do you have any additional questions?
No.
Yes.
Oh, you do?
I do. I have more questions. I have a lot of questions in my life.
About 401k?
About, okay, I'm like really eager to learn. Isn't everybody?
We've got a bot that'll help you with that.
Wait, is there not another question? Did you
I'm not
pause it?
gonna-
Oh, he stopped it. Oh, okay. I thought we were going to listen to the other
I think,
question.
I'm tickled pink because I'm just, as a technologist, pursuing this lifelong dream of being able to see this happen. What I'm trying to show you here is that here's an unstructured document written by people who are well-versed at writing good documents. We've taken technology and married it together, and within a weekend or two, we can actually rip that document apart with an NLP pipeline, put all that information into and stage it into a system that we can then query with our bot with natural language and get to the facts of that document. It's a very powerful capability, very powerful, and I'm really excited about the future, what we can do for organizations with this technology married together.
So we have, I have one more example that we can show that shows how we've put this into place for a healthcare organization that's looking at changing your primary care providers. So we have this very elegant way of saying, ask me, I want to change my primary care provider, and I ask a question, and it says, okay, it then queries our graph to determine what that proper response is. I'm going to hold off on showing that just yet and see if that's something we can go down in a moment, but I wanted to stop and see if there were any questions about how we've done this or where we're going with this. Yes, sir? That's a great question. So
the question is, okay, I'm looking for a fact-based response, or hey, I actually want to take on some sort of task and actually. Right. So that's where the ensemble models happens. There's one model
Combination of the two
that's managing and listening for this question that's out of context for the actual flow that you're in. And so we're building these ensembles that say, okay, I'm hearing it's a symbol text classifier that says, hey, I'm looking for an agent. Another symbol text classifier might recognize the fact that you are having a challenge with the flow you're currently in, and the response you gave didn't seem to map up to anything we can actually map you to. So we would look both to that model and the other model that says, here are all the other flows we can help you with. Is there a map to that? Or here's a response from the graph that says, here's how to answer that question for you. And we create this ensemble, and then we score them independently. They aren't measured against each other, but looking for different confidence levels and a priority of how they all come together. And that's how I refer to that as an ensemble.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I say, if there's a catch-up plan, then potentially I could say, well, I want to add $5,000, I want to increase it by $5,000.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I sign up for the catch-up plan, right? So that would be.
right.
Yep.
So there's a couple of different ways that we would approach something like that.
We haven't put that exact example together
Yeah.
and made that work, but that's a very
That
natural thing
wasn't-
that we want to
yeah.
actually solve for, right?
It's a great scenario. But I think there's a couple of different ways, and I would go back to there's a couple of like kind of simpler ways, and there's more complex ways. The simpler ways is to use a flow approach, a deterministic approach, to say, you want to make another deposit, or I want to do a catch-up contribution. The bot could respond back with, first of all, do you have any more questions? You say no. Is there anything else I can help you with? Yes, I want to I want to do that payment, right? And then we have the knowledge model to understand. Oh, he wants to make a contribution. Let's take him down the contribution path. Right? So it's a matter of designing, in some respects, the ability for a customer to do that. That's I would say the simplest of the two approaches. The slightly more complex approach is to use a much more broader knowledge models to be able to parse out whichever response you get.
I mean, the other side of this too is actually in the actual how we actually activate and do that. So we've already designed all those process flows, right? We know that's processed inside the organization. We have the language already encoded into the organization around that. We discover what those language elements are. We bring those together into a specific classifier that says, here are all the different flows you can actually do or processes you can do.
Yeah.
And we build that into a specific model specifically for that. And then we organize it in the right priority to be listening for those intents.
Good. Perfect. Good. Any other questions on how we're doing this or what we're building? Oh, yeah. Sorry, though. So that's a good question. Do you want to talk through how Cognizer does it?
Sure. We definitely use a couple of different. Cognizer is a very complex system.
Oh, yeah. The question. I'm sorry. Thank you very
How
much.
is this actually doing? How is?
Yeah. How do we actually take the information out of the bot and actually make it work? So yes, please go ahead.
Sure. How is this actually happening? So yes, we use an NLP process, a very complex one, full of stemming, lemmonization, all the things you do in a proper way to actually get to the facts of the document. You get the embeddings from a deep learning model around the actual language itself too. You store that both into a graph and into an embeddings database simultaneously. Then you query. Once you pull in a query, the query has to also be processed simultaneously in runtime at this point after the build time work that happened there. Then now you can take those things along with the databases and the graph together and score and figure out which one of them has the better response. And then you refer back to the original document has the original text, but that's already put into another database that is associated to it. All those things are pre-staged, ready to go, parsed apart, large systems.
Right.
That's what knowledge graphs do.
It's very much not like you put the answer into a Lex, utterance,
Yes.
right? That is absolutely not what's happening here. You're then calling into the bots from the databases from Lex when appropriate.
Most conversational systems today are just built off of simple text classifiers. It's a dialogue flow system of 3 or 4 years ago. It's just one layer, one text classifier. And at some time, we were actually just trying to do the entire bot with a single text classifier. What we're talking about here is like every conversational point is a contextual point, which needs to have its own natural language system around that context. And the context is not just the process itself, it's the context of where the human is in their journey with the organization as well.
Perfect. Good. Any other questions that you have on this process? You were looking to create a knowledge base, right? I'm going to go back to you. You mentioned this in the beginning. Is this a similar approach that you're trying to take with your knowledge base, or how are you tackling that approach or that goal?
We've actually attempted this very same thing, and we worked with it for the last few years, so a very similar pattern. I would say that our customers tend to want to have tighter control over their facts and their answers.
Okay.
And so when we try to approach being like, let's figure it out for you, you give us a document, we'll figure out something like this.
Right.
What tended to happen was that it wasn't as fine-grained or fine-tuned for their specific business use case for their facts, and they wanted to be the ones providing like the answers.
Yeah.
How do you answer, and in what scenarios do you use what facts?
I mean, absolutely, 100% agree with you, and that's the next challenge, which is bringing the human in the loop process into the whole system. We're working on that right now.
Yeah, I think there are some. So I would say I have two thoughts on that. But the first one is what we are developing in partnership with Cognizer is the ability to. Before we share a response with a customer, it has to be approved by a user, right? So what that means is there's an interface that's been developed that allows an internal user, right? Let's just call them quality assurance for the moment, to go in and run against that data set all series of questions and get back the responses, and then they can read them and say yes or no, right? And vote, essentially say, are these viable for the end user? Now, what's really powerful though is when a customer asks a net new question, a novel question, you have to decide, how do you want to respond to that? Do you give them a high confidence response, or do you say, you know what, I can't answer that question, not this time, but I'm now going to route that question to a person for a proper response, and then once that person reviews it and approves it, it then goes back into the pool for the next time. That's the approach. That's the human in the loop kind of process that we recommend around sort of managing data, especially sensitive data. We're working with, any kind of time we're working with pharmaceuticals or, anywhere the information you're providing back could have possible significant consequences. You have to make sure that the answers are been vetted.
There's other techniques you can use too. If you have a little bit more leeway, you can actually use some of the deep learning models to get summaries out of these things as well. So you might get a whole 3 or 4 paragraphs and say, hey, let's summarize that. That summary may be slightly correct or slightly incorrect, and it might be for the wrong audience too. So we're seeing a lot of advancements in examples like GTP3, if you've been playing around with that.
There's also and I'm sorry, we'll let this one go, but there's also another interesting thing that you can do, which is if you're using source material that is, let's say you're using unstructured documents like this one, but are public domain or at least accessible to your customers, right? The knowledge graph cannot just track the particular response, right? Oh, your contribution is age 50 or over. It can link to this document and to this paragraph and share that with the customer. So the response can be more than just, oh, you have to be an employee and age 50 and over. It can be through a rich web chat or through an email or SMS. Let me send you a link to the document that has the answer. It's paragraph 5, page 4.
That actually brings up to the bigger value proposition that the whole TruthSphere ecosystem is all about, which is the ability to actually address these responses to users on multiple various channels. So in that case, when Yoni gets that response, he'd be like, here's a summary really quickly, here's the complete response, I'm going to send you an SMS link to that, and then switch them over to the web channel where that's more appropriate to actually have them actually look at the PDF and that part of the PDF.
Yeah, we've been talking about a very singular channel here. We've been talking about voice, right? But to be completely transparent, right? Voice is just one channel that you have to address. You have to be dealing with the digital channel through the web. You have to be dealing with digital through the phone. You have to be doing SMS. You have to be doing Apple Business Chat. You have to be doing, I'm sure I'm blanking on something, but whatever it is, you have to use smoke signals. Whatever it is that's more than just voice, right? That's just one channel. We're just using that as a way to represent, because I think voice is one of the hardest channels to handle.
And today organizations, when you look at their channel or how they orchestrate their channels, most of them today in large organizations are really siloed, and all those silos are not talking to each other. And what tomorrow can bring us with the new conversational AI capabilities and the ability to pull in unstructured information from the organizations, is you can really go over the top, and you can actually deliver the promise that people are actually asking for, which is, I'm driving my car, I want to solve this problem, make that payment, and I get to the house, I want to be able to make dinner and talk to my Alexa to actually convene that conversation, or be on my computer and continue to have that context in place the entire time. So the continuity in the journey is the most important part of the user experience.
That's right. All right, well, guys, I want to thank you very, very much for hanging out with us for an hour. We are going to be we have a booth downstairs, and we'll be there, booth 103 today at 5, and also tomorrow, where we can actually demo a lot more and go into a lot more details. So if you actually want to dig into this with us and have a deeper conversation, feel free to do that. Feel free to come by the booth, and you can hang out with Daniel and I. Carrie, who's waving in the back, she's doing that on cue, by the way, obviously. If you want to get more information about what we've talked about, you can also talk to Carrie. So thank you guys very much. Thanks for attending. And yeah, stick around if you have any questions or you want to talk to us later. Come by the booth. Thanks.